Henry, a 17-year-old high school student weighing 220 pounds, endured constant ridicule from his classmates, who gave him cruel nicknames. Despite feeling isolated and dejected, there was one person who brought light to his life: Sophia, the most beautiful girl in school. Henry harbored a deep crush on her, but he never imagined she would notice him. One day, something astonishing happened. Sophia invited Henry to a party at her house. Overjoyed, Henry saw this as his golden opportunity to impress her. He rented a fancy suit and borrowed a luxury car to make a grand entrance. Determined to make everything perfect, he even borrowed money from friends to buy her expensive gifts, envisioning the joy on her face when he presented them. On the day of the party, Henry was nervous but filled with hope. Dressed in his new suit, he arrived at Sophia's lavish house, which was bustling with students. With a shy smile, Henry handed her the gifts, only to be met with laughter. Confused, he watched as Sophia called everyone's attention. His heart raced. He thought she might say something kind. Instead, her words cut deep. "It was all a bet," Sophia announced with a wicked grin. "We wanted to see if I could go out with the ugliest boy in school." Laughter erupted around him, and Henry felt his heart shatter. Sophia's real boyfriend emerged from the crowd, taunting him further. Overwhelmed by humiliation, Henry fled the party in tears. Once home, he locked himself in his room, crying until his eyes were swollen. To his horror, clips from the party flooded social media, amplifying his shame. His anguish soon turned into anger. "I'll get my revenge," he vowed silently. For 2 weeks, Henry avoided school, switched off his phone, and isolated himself. Consumed by thoughts of retaliation, he eventually decided to return to school, but disguised himself with a mask to avoid stares and laughter. However, as soon as he entered the classroom, mockery resumed. Sophia and her friends ridiculed him relentlessly, with one of them attempting to rip off his mask. Before she could, Emily, a quiet classmate, intervened. Emily, whose mother worked as a housekeeper for Sophia's family, knew the sting of being mocked. "Leave him alone," Emily said firmly, silencing the room momentarily. Sophia retaliated by humiliating Emily, revealing her mother's job to the class. The laughter resumed, but Emily stood her ground. After school, Henry caught up with Emily to thank her. Though hesitant, he asked if they could be friends. Emily agreed warmly, and their bond began to grow. As they walked home, Sophia's driver arrived, calling for Emily. Surprised, Henry learned that Emily lived at Sophia's house, but wasn't allowed to ride in the same car. Sophia's cruelty became clearer to Henry, sparking his disgust. Henry offered Emily a ride home, and she gratefully accepted. When they arrived at Sophia's house, Emily thanked Henry and stepped inside, only to be greeted by chaos. The living room was flooded, and her mother was scrubbing the floor in tears. Emily's mother explained that Sophia had deliberately poured water everywhere, punishing them for Emily's defense of Henry. Enraged, Emily confronted Sophia, who mockingly escalated the mess by throwing more water. Emily's mother stopped her from retaliating, and they cleaned in silence. Later that night, Sophia secretly took the spare key to Emily's home from the kitchen. Exhausted, Emily and her mother left Sophia's house, only to discover they were locked out. Forced to sit outside in the cold and rain, they endured a miserable night. At school, Sophia's bullying intensified, making life unbearable for everyone. Meanwhile, Henry's chance encounter with his rising singer cousin Kelvin revealed a shocking twist. Sophia had been sending Kelvin messages, desperate for his attention. An idea formed in Henry's mind. With Kelvin's permission, he began replying to Sophia's messages, pretending to be Kelvin. Oblivious to the truth, Sophia was thrilled by the interaction, especially when Henry asked Kelvin agreed to be her date for the upcoming school prom. Determined to turn the tables, Henry prepared for his ultimate plan. Sophia sat alone on the steps of her family's home, trembling as the weight of her actions bore down on her. She was surrounded by darkness, both outside and within, with no idea where to turn. The message from her father replayed in her mind like a haunting echo. "We're done with you." The only option now was to return to her grandmother in the village, but the thought of facing her grandmother's disappointment was unbearable. For the first time in years, Sophia realized just how far she had fallen from the kind, grateful child she used to be. As she gathered her courage to stand up, a soft voice called out from the shadows. "Sophia?" She turned to see Emily standing nearby, her face glowing with concern. Behind her stood Henry, who looked hesitant but determined. "What are you doing here?" Sophia asked bitterly, trying to wipe away her tears before they could see how broken she felt. "We came to talk," Emily said gently. "My mom, she's still in jail because of you. But I just want to understand why you did it." Sophia froze. She hadn't expected Emily to seek her out, much less show her kindness. "I don't know," Sophia whispered, her voice shaking. "I was jealous and desperate. You and Henry always seemed so close, and everyone at school loves you. I wanted to be admired too." Henry stepped forward. "You didn't have to tear others down to build yourself up, Sophia. Do you even realize how much damage you've caused? My mom lost her job because of you, and Emily's mom could lose her freedom. Do you care about anyone but yourself?" His words hit Sophia like a slap. She had no defense. They were right. I don't know how to fix this," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I ruined everything." Emily and Henry exchanged a glance. Despite everything Sophia had done, Emily's kind heart refused to let her walk away without giving her a chance to make amends. "There might be a way," Emily said softly. "If you're really sorry, you'll help us clear my mom's name. You're the only one who can." Sophia hesitated. Admitting the truth would mean facing the wrath of the police and her family. It could destroy any chance of salvaging her reputation. But as she looked into Emily's eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. "What do I need to do?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The next morning, Sophia accompanied Emily and Henry to the police station. Her hands shook as she stepped up to the counter, where an officer looked at her with suspicion. "I need to make a statement," Sophia said, forcing herself to meet the officer's gaze. She confessed everything, planting the necklace, stealing from her mother, and lying to everyone around her. The officers listened carefully, taking notes as Sophia poured out her guilt. When she finished, the officer leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. "You understand that admitting this means you'll face consequences, right? Filing a false report and stealing are serious crimes." Sophia nodded. "I understand. I just want to make things right." The police immediately contacted Emily's mom, who was released later that day. Although relieved, she struggled to forgive Sophia, and it was clear that rebuilding trust would take time. Sophia's confession had a ripple effect. Her parents, though furious and hurt, allowed her back into their home on the condition that she take responsibility for her actions. She worked tirelessly to repay the debt for the car she crashed, taking on odd jobs around town and selling her possessions. At school, Sophia became the target of gossip and ridicule, but she bore it without complaint. She apologized to her classmates, including her ex-boyfriend and the friends she had alienated. Some forgave her, others didn't. Meanwhile, Emily and Henry's lives flourished. Henry had become more confident, earning the respect of his peers. Emily, too, shone brightly, her kindness earning her admiration. One day, as Sophia scrubbed tables at a local diner, Emily walked in. She sat down and smiled softly. "You're really trying, aren't you?" Emily said. Sophia nodded. "It's all I can do now. I just want to be better." Months passed, and Sophia slowly began to rebuild her life. The scars of her actions remained, but so did the lessons she had learned. She understood now that true beauty and success came from kindness and integrity, not from wealth or appearances. On a bright spring day, Emily and Henry visited Sophia at the diner. They had surprising news. Emily's mom had forgiven her and wanted to offer her a chance to work at her new catering business. Sophia was stunned. "Why would she do that after everything I did?" "Because she believes in second chances," Emily said with a smile. "And so do we." For the first time in months, Sophia felt a spark of hope. She wasn't sure if she could ever fully atone for her mistakes, but she was determined to spend the rest of her life trying. And sneered at Henry, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. You think you could just come here and solve all her problems? You think money can fix this? Henry stepped forward, his presence commanding the room. How much, he repeated, his voice firm yet calm. The old farmer hesitated for a moment, his pride evident in his stubborn stance. $10,000. That's what she owes me, and if she doesn't marry me, I'll make sure she ends up back in jail. The classmates, who had been watching from the sidelines, murmured in shock. Emily and Jenny exchanged worried glances, unsure of what Henry would do next. Henry reached into his pocket without hesitation, pulling out a thick wad of cash. He held it out toward the farmer, his eyes locked on the older man's. "Here," Henry said, his voice low. "Take it. The debt is paid." The old farmer's eyes flicked down to the money, his greedy expression shifting momentarily. But he didn't take the money. Instead, he scoffed. "You think this is enough to fix everything? She owes me more than that. She ruined my life, my reputation." Henry's gaze hardened. "You're forcing her into a marriage because she couldn't pay a debt you created by taking advantage of her situation. That's not a debt. It's extortion." The farmer's face reddened with rage, but Henry stood tall, unshaken. He glanced at Sophia, who was still trembling, her tears staining her face. "You don't have to marry him," Henry said, his voice softening as he turned back to Sophia. "You don't have to do this. We can fix this together." Sophia looked at Henry, her heart pounding in her chest. It had been so long since anyone had offered her a way out of the darkness she had created. The shame of her actions, the guilt of pushing everyone away, had overwhelmed her for so long. But now, Henry was offering her a second chance. The old farmer growled, "This is my last warning. Either marry me or suffer the consequences." Henry took a step forward, his eyes piercing. "If you don't release her from this debt right now, I'll make sure you never see a penny from her, or anyone else in this village. You'll be exposed for what you really are." The farmer paused, his anger bubbling beneath the surface. The tension in the air was thick, everyone waiting for him to make a move. For a long moment, the farmer glared at Henry, considering his options. Finally, the old man relented, his pride crushed. He snatched the money from Henry's hand, muttering under his breath, "Fine. It's done. But remember this, girl. You're lucky." Sophia stood there, trembling, her mind racing. The weight of what had just happened hung heavily in the air. But for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. Henry turned to her, his eyes softening. "You don't have to do this, Sophia. You can rebuild your life, and I'll be here to help. But you need to take responsibility for your mistakes. Start by apologizing to those you hurt." Sophia wiped her tears, nodding slowly. "I will. I promise." The group stood in the quiet of the church for a long moment, the weight of the past lingering in the air. Sophia could feel the walls she had built around herself begin to crumble, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't sure what the future would hold. But it was a future she was willing to face. As Sophia settled into her new life, the road ahead was not without its challenges. But for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had a purpose. Her parents had welcomed her back with open arms, offering their love and support, and Sophia was determined to make up for the time lost. She knew she couldn't undo the mistakes of the past, but she could start making better choices now. Sophia threw herself into her studies, determined to finish her education. The years of working as a cleaner had humbled her, and she felt a deep drive to build a future that honored the sacrifices her parents had made for her. She often thought about the lessons Henry had taught her: how to be kind, how to work hard, and how to never take anything for granted. But even as she moved forward, Sophia couldn't shake the image of Henry's bittersweet smile as he stood watching her leave. She knew that part of the journey she had to take was understanding the ways in which people like Henry, who had once been so hurt by her, could still show such grace. She hadn't expected forgiveness, let alone a chance to start over, but he had given her that, whether she had truly earned it or not. Over time, as she settled into her new routine, Sophia began reaching out to the friends she had lost touch with. Some of them, like Emily, were understanding and supportive. Others, however, still held on to the judgment they had of her in the past. Sophia realized that, in the end, the only approval that mattered was her own. She worked hard to rebuild the relationships that had been broken and learned that the true test of character was not just in receiving forgiveness, but in the ability to forgive herself. As she worked side by side with her parents on their small farm, she found a deep sense of contentment she had never experienced before. There was something fulfilling about the quiet life, about the love and trust that surrounded her. One day, months later, she received a letter from Henry. It was short but filled with warmth. Dear Sophia, I hope this letter finds you well. It's been a while since we last spoke. I'm happy to hear that you're doing well and that you've found your place again. I know things didn't end the way either of us expected, but I hope you understand now why I did what I did. I wanted to give you a chance. We all deserve a chance at happiness. Take care, and remember that life is about the choices we make and the strength to learn from our mistakes. Best. Henry. Reading those words, Sophia felt a lump form in her throat. It wasn't just a letter, it was Henry's final gift to her. He had given her the freedom to choose her path, the wisdom to find her way back, and now, the space to grow. The next day, Sophia wrote him back, her letter filled with gratitude, acknowledging the ways in which his kindness had changed her. She would never forget the lesson he had taught her, and she would carry it with her always. As the seasons changed, so did Sophia. She learned that life wasn't just about the big moments of redemption, but also about the small, everyday choices. It was about kindness, self-reflection, and learning to live with integrity. And as she looked forward to the future, she knew that no matter where the road would take her, she would never forget the kindness that had been shown to her, by Henry, by her parents, and by the few true friends who had never given up on her. And just like that, Sophia finally found peace in her heart. Sophia's journey had come a long way from the days of regret and loneliness in Henry's grand house. It had been 2 years since she left, and while the scars of her past were still there, they had become a part of her, shaping the woman she had become. She had started small, working with her parents to build a new life. Together, they had mended their broken relationship, and the love they shared now was stronger than ever. Sophia had also worked hard to regain the trust of her old friends, proving that she was no longer the spoiled, self-centered girl they had known. She had become someone they could admire, not just for her hard work, but for her humility and the lessons she had learned. One day, as Sophia was sitting in her room, working on a personal project, she received the unexpected phone call from Henry. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw his name on the screen, and for a moment, she hesitated. After everything that had happened, she was unsure what this call would mean. "Hello," she answered, her voice trembling slightly. "Sophia." Henry's voice was calm, steady, and perhaps a little softer than she remembered. "I have an offer for you." Sophia listened carefully as Henry explained that he had recently expanded his company and was looking for someone who could help build the new division focused on social responsibility. He mentioned her growth, how he had seen her work ethic and transformation, and that he believed she could play a vital role in shaping the future of the company. At first, Sophia was taken aback. She hadn't expected Henry to reach out, let alone offer her such a position. She thought of the pain they had shared in the past, how cold he had been to her during those months of cleaning his house, and how she had once mocked him. Yet, as he spoke, she realized that the Henry she remembered was no longer the same person. He had changed too. He had seen the value in people beyond their mistakes, and his heart had softened as well. Sophia was hesitant, but Emily's voice in the back of her mind encouraged her to embrace this opportunity. "You've come so far," she told herself. "This could be the next step to proving that redemption is possible for anyone." The following weeks were a whirlwind. She made the decision to join Henry's company, but with clear boundaries in place. She wasn't going to let their past define her, nor was she going to rely solely on Henry's influence. She wanted to prove to herself that she had earned her place, not as Henry's charity case, but as an individual with her own talents and worth. When she walked into the company's headquarters for her first day, she couldn't help but feel a rush of emotions. The last time she had been here, she was a cleaner, feeling small and insignificant. Now, she was walking into a building with a new sense of purpose. Her new role was challenging, but Sophia was determined. As weeks turned into months, Sophia thrived in her position. She became known not just for her hard work, but for her compassion and dedication to the company's new social initiatives. She helped organize outreach programs, internships for underprivileged youth, and awareness campaigns on sustainability. Sophia used her experiences to connect with others who had faced struggles like hers, showing them that they too could rise above their circumstances. Through it all, Henry was there, always supporting her from behind the scenes, never seeking praise or recognition. There were moments of awkwardness, moments when they had to confront their past, but over time, they built a professional relationship based on mutual respect. It wasn't easy, but both of them had grown, and that growth was reflected in the work they did together. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Henry and Sophia sat in his office, looking over plans for the company's next big project. As the last of the staff left the building, the silence between them felt different, comfortable almost. "You've done well," Henry said quietly, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "I never thought I'd see this day. To see you, not just as the girl who used to mock me, but as someone who's made something of herself. I'm proud of you, Sophia." Sophia smiled, the weight of her past lifting from her shoulders. "Thank you, Henry. I never expected you to say that." "I'm in it," he said simply. The two sat in silence for a moment, both of them reflecting on how far they had come. A year later, Sophia's parents were visiting her in the city. They had come to see her office, proud of the woman their daughter had become. They were also there to celebrate the upcoming opening of a new company branch, an achievement that Sophia had spearheaded. As she stood with them in front of the building, her parents beaming with pride, Sophia couldn't help but think back to the girl she had once been, arrogant, blind to the consequences of her actions, and lost in her own privilege. But standing there now, surrounded by the people she loved, she knew she had found something far more valuable than wealth or status. She had found her place in the world. It was a place where kindness and hard work could create change, where second chances were given and accepted, and where the past no longer defined her. Sophia had become someone who understood that redemption wasn't about undoing mistakes. It was about learning from them and using them to build a better future. And as she looked toward that future, filled with hope and endless possibilities, she knew that no matter what came next, she was ready.